All right, just give a couple moments for people to log in here. Just that. So some questions did come in over the course of the week, and actually I'm going to put them over on the little chat side on the right-hand side. You'll actually see the questions that have been asked, and so I will go ahead and answer those. And then obviously the ones that get typed in, people can see those. So you'll be able to see every question that's addressed in this chat over here. And then if others come in, I will put them in there as well. I think I have one more that I have to see. Let me see. Okay. Okay, so we'll just get started. I'll start answering these questions. And then if others join, then feel free to ask your questions here in the chat. And if you're watching this later, again, everything is over here on the chat. So the first question someone asked was, I filed for an LLC. They're in Massachusetts. I was approved for an NPI too. What should I do next? And I think this is a really good question. This is a question that I wish there were more clear answers to, but there aren't. But I guess that the first thing we see here is that this person has already done their LLC. And sometimes in other states, it's a PLLC, but this is basically setting up your business entity, right? Kind of creating separation between you as an individual and then your practice as a business. So that's a really good first step. And then the NPI 2. So this is kind of an identification number for your group practice. Now, every provider who's licensed has an NPI for themselves. If you're going to do a group practice and you want to be paneled with insurance companies, then you're going to need the NPI 2, which is the same type kind of number, but for your practice. And then the question is, what should I do next, right? And so now we have to figure out, well, how do we go from there to hiring someone? And there's a couple things. This is why it's a little bit confusing, because there's a couple things that you can do at the same time, but eventually you have to complete one before moving on to the next. So you have to get payroll set up. That's going to be your next step, is to get payroll set up. And getting payroll set up involves a couple steps. So one is finding a payroll software. And like I spoke about before, the software that I use is called Gusto. I guess maybe software is not the right term, but it's like an online platform, basically. You log in and everything is web-based. And Gusto is how you will pay your employees. Gusto allows you to access to all sorts of tools. So you can send employment agreements when you hire someone. You can do payroll, meaning that's how you pay someone every 2 weeks or every month, however you're doing your payroll. And it calculates all the taxes. It does all of that for you. So that is payroll is non-negotiable. You're absolutely going to need that, right? So you need to get that set up. In addition, you will also need to get you have to kind of figure out from the state which account you need set up. So you need a taxpayer's account, basically. And now I have a link to this in another video I made called How to Hire. I'll put that there. There'll be a link for the New York State taxpayer account that you need to open. If you're in another state, you can just Google how to open a taxpayer or a payroll account, basically, is what you're looking for as an employee. And so you need to open that account. So you can do that manually, or you can actually do that via Gusto. So you might want to start by signing up for Gusto or your payroll software, and then they will lead you through the next steps of getting set up with your state to pay employees properly. So I would recommend Gusto and then that route to kind of give you the stepwise fashion in what exactly you need to do. And then during that process, while you're getting payroll set up and all the tax stuff set up with your state as an employer, and when I say taxpayer account, I mean you're an employer taxpayer account, not just a standard tax-paying account. In the midst of doing that and getting that set up, which can take a little while, not as long as setting up an LLC, but it can take a couple weeks, something like that. You can begin to interview people, right? You can interview people. You can kind of see if there's candidates out there for the position you're looking for. Obviously, when you look for an employee, you have to write a job description. You could do word of mouth. You can do Indeed. You can do LinkedIn, but you can start to look for a candidate, and you can begin the interview process, right? However, what you can't do is formally hire someone until your payroll is set up. And you need an employer agreement or some sort of contract that kind of is something that you and the employee sign, agreeing to the terms of what this job is all about. You can find templates online, but I recommend speaking to an attorney. I'll talk about how to find one in a moment. And then you also have to make sure that you are providing what the state requires to that employee. So for New York, not only do you open that employer tax paying account, but you also have to provide workers' compensation, and you have to provide short-term disability and paid family leave, right? And so you have to get that, which is like an insurance policy, and have that established before you hire someone. And again, you can do that on your own by Googling, or you can have Gusto help you set that up. I would recommend using Gusto because then it's all integrated. So I would recommend, if you're going through this process, sign up for Gusto, follow their steps. They'll lead you through the taxpayer account. They'll lead you through all the workers' compensation, all that you need. While you're doing that, you can interview and start getting ready to hire. And then once you make a decision on who you're going to hire, hopefully all that stuff will be established and set up. You'll have it paid for and secured. And then from there, you can send the employee the agreement or the contract, whatever it is that you have for them to sign. So that is what I would do next. I wish it was more like 1, 2, 3, but it's kind of a little bit mixed up there. But hopefully that helps answer your question. Another person asks, so this is a person who is on Alma. And if you don't know, Alma is I guess like a startup company, and they help panel therapists so they can take insurance and make things really easy getting paneled. And someone asked, after putting a client into the Simple Practice platform and then setting up Alma as the insurance platform and disabling the insurance feature on Simple Practice, what do you do to track the services and payments for that client in Simple Practice? So one thing you'll notice as you go into private practice, you want to avoid this, but you really can't all the time, is you end up with a lot of tools, right? So you have Alma for your insurance clients, you have Simple Practice for your cash pay clients, perhaps Simple Practice for your note taking, you have Gusto for payroll. You get the point. There's just a lot of different tools you have. And so Alma, if you're seeing clients through Alma, you're taking their insurance, you're going to have all of that payment info kind of living in the Alma platform. And then in Simple Practice, that's where you do all your note taking. You have to find a way to kind of track the payments and things like that. So I see people doing this in all sorts of ways. Sometimes people will keep the two platforms separate. So they will see clients in Alma and only keep that billing information there. And then in Simple Practice, they'll mark it as $0, or they won't record it in Simple Practice. And then they know that at the end of the year, when they get their readout from Alma, that's where those clients are. One thing that I do is that I will take the reimbursement rate and I'll make it a cash pay transaction. I don't actually, no credit card transaction, but it just reflects as if it was a cash pay transaction. That way I can keep all of that kind of information in one place in Simple Practice. That's where I can go. So I know that if it's a cash pay transaction, it's from Alma. And then for the other people that are who are actually not using their insurance, who are cash pay, I use the Simple Practice credit card processor to do all that. So there's only going to be basically one of two things. There's going to be cash pay, which is going to be all my Alma clients. And then there's going to be an actual credit card transaction for those who don't use their insurance or who are not on Alma. And then at the end of the year, I know between those two who is from where. And that's how I make that work. You can also ask an accountant that question and kind of see what they recommend, because they'll also be helping you do your taxes at the end. But hopefully that's helpful. And then lastly, someone also asked, how do you find a lawyer? And this is in the context of starting a group practice. What are some of the general costs for employing someone, and exactly where do you start? So the where to start question I kind of answered with the first one about Gusto and payroll and all that. But if you're hopping in and you are you haven't even done the PLLC, the first place to start is to establish a business entity. And a business entity is, again, going to separate you as an individual and then you or your practice as the business. And having a business entity is important because it will protect you from employee mistakes. It just keeps things secure, and it helps mitigate risk. Now, not entirely. There are some complications when it comes to PLLCs and LLCs and how exactly you're protected and things like that. But generally speaking, if you have an LLC set up and you're a licensed professional in New York, they may give a PLLC, then you are protected from your employees' mistakes. And so having a PLLC is going to be step one. And I would start there. And then from there, you can kind of go through the Gusto, and then kind of get payroll and all that set up. In terms of how do you find a lawyer, the best way to do that is word of mouth. But I also have a directory that I provide access to for free. I'll leave a link in the description of this video. Over the time I've been doing private practice, I've come across a lot of word of mouth referrals. I put them all in this directory. It's completely free. You can check that out, and you can look at different lawyers. These are typically healthcare lawyers. So if you're looking for a lawyer, you want to specifically look for a lawyer who specializes in healthcare. And then you can even go niche down even more and find a lawyer who specializes in mental health care. And that's going to be a really good starting point to find a lawyer. And then some of the costs of hiring or employing someone. Well, first off, you're going to have to pay for the platform that you're using, note taking. So that might be Simple Practice or Therapy Notes, whatever it is that you're using. You're going to pay for that. And typically that price starts to go up quite a lot once you bring on a client. You're going to need to, depending on whether you go W-2 or 1099, you're going to have to pay a certain amount of taxes. If they're a W-2 employee, you pay taxes. And I don't have a specific answer to what that number is, but you pay taxes on their behalf as their employer. So that's going to be another cost. And then you also have to pay for other things as well. So you have to pay for the payroll platform, right? So that has a cost associated with it. That usually has a monthly cost just to have the platform, and then a per employee cost as well. So you're going to have those things, those costs. Now, those are going to be kind of the foundational ones. And then if you're doing any sort of marketing, you're going to have to pay for Psychology Today, Alma, whatever it is. If you have LCs, they can be on Alma. If you have LMs, they cannot. So Alma might not be applicable. But those are some of the general costs. And then also you're going to have to pay for, if you haven't done the PLLC, you have to pay to get that done. If you need to build a website, now that you have a group practice, you have more people, you're going to have to pay for a website, perhaps. Some of the costs are optional, but the ones that are absolutely not optional are obviously increasing the number of people that can access your EHR. Payroll software is not optional. And then malpractice insurance, that's also going to increase as you take on employees. And then obviously what you need to pay as the one for employee taxes, that's going to be another, obviously not optional. And then the paid family leave, workers' compensation, all of that as well. This is not optional. And one thing I tell people is that when you start a group practice, the startup costs are typically much higher than when you're just doing your solo practice. And there's a lot more upfront costs, something to be aware of. So those answer those couple of questions. Of course, if there are more, I'm happy to stick around for a couple moments to kind of answer any others that come in. If not, though, I'll give it a couple minutes. We can wrap up here, but hopefully we'll have these kind of office hours every so often. All right. Well, looks like there's no other questions. It was great to hop on and answer these questions. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you guys soon. Have a good rest of your week.